Sit back and relax as you listen to A Classroom Carol, brought to you by Alexis Howard. On her way out of the classroom, Miss Howard stopped to talk to a pair of her colleagues and told them that teaching science made her feel like a humbug, in which they responded with laughter. She then was stopped by one of her students, who asked her to extend an assignment, but Howard refused. Passing some other students working on a creative project for another science class in front of her door, she shouted at them to be off. Entering the front office, 2 other students awaited, asking her for a rubric for the upcoming project. "Is there no detention available to place these pesky students in?" asked Howard, and told them to leave her alone. She was too busy with her own business to concern herself with the question of irresponsible students. The students withdrew, and Howard's principal, Miss Powers, entered. She invited Howard to the end of the banquet, but Howard refused that as well. As she left, Powers asked Howard's partner teacher in the science department, Miss Stanfield, about her family, and they wished each other a good spring break. Meanwhile, Stanfield's husband, Jonathan, was at the bulletin board outside the office door, admiring some projects presented by another class. He walked up to her with his backpack, and the 2 of them went home. As the school day ended, Howard berated her students for requesting the entire spring break to finish an assignment that was due earlier that day. Tired from a long day of straight lecturing in all of her classes, she decided to have her dinner at a local restaurant and then returned home, where she saw in her doorbell the apparition of one of her first students she ever taught, Bob Marley. Frightened, she locked herself in her room and ate a late-night snack by a small fire. Suddenly, all of the bells around her began to ring, and just as suddenly stop. A clanking and banging out on the stairs soon revealed the ghost of Bob Marley. Howard denied believing in the ghost, thinking it was more likely to be an issue with her digestion, but the ghost eventually convinced her otherwise. Marley was doomed to walk the earth, unsure of what to do with his life. Howard pointed out that Marley was a good science student, but Marley explained that making a difference in the world beyond the classroom was his actual calling. He offered Howard a chance of escaping his own fate by the visits of 3 spirits. He also showed Howard, through the window, the ghost of many of her past students surrounding a young girl perplexed about the science lesson being taught, and explained that they wished they could help her but could not. Howard slammed the window shut, ran to her bed, and hid under the covers. When the clock struck 1, Howard awakened to the sight of the first ghost, the ghost of teachers past. She took Howard back in time to her first school, where young Howard felt alone and overwhelmed as a first-year teacher in the workroom, having jammed the copier. A knock on the door revealed her mentor, Fran, who had come to take her back to her room. She promised to care for her as long as she was in her stead, and Howard told her she must mentor her for as long as she would be a teacher. Older Howard told the spirit that Fran had retired only after mentoring her for 1 year, a fact for which she never forgave her. The scene changed to an end-of-the-year class party in Howard's classroom, where she had been nurturing the minds of her students all year long. She told the spirit that the happiness her students had given her was as great as if it had cost a fortune, a fact that also gave her pause. Just then they looked in the corner, where the younger Howard was talking to a student named Alice that she had tutored all semester long. As they continued to watch the scene unfold, Alice had tears come to her eyes as young Miss Howard showed her the 100 she had made on her final exam. Out of nowhere, the scene switched again to Howard excited to be trying something new in her classroom. She wanted the students to get inspired when thinking about science, so she had all of them illustrate what science meant through their eyes. All of a sudden, her first principal came in to observe how her class was running. Thinking as though her lesson had really sparked inspiration in the minds of her students, her principal scolded her on her choice of approaching the lesson. "You are being way too nice. Didn't anyone tell you you shouldn't let up until Christmas? What was this silly approach to the lesson you conducted? Having students think for themselves what science means to them? Of course it should go in conjunction with the curriculum." Flashing forward a week, Howard had accepted the advice of the principal and began to simply lecture to her students exactly what was in the curriculum. where she then addressed one of her students, the young Bob Marley. Eventually, Howard was forced to run her classroom exactly to the principal's liking. Having noticed the change in teaching style, Bob confronted Howard, telling her he feared the class would grow to dislike science unless she went back to her previous style of teaching, where students were learning to think for themselves. He also told her that he thought science was something he might be passionate about pursuing when he got older. Another year of middle school passed, with Marley about to move on to high school, and Howard refused to listen to her own instinct and teach in her own unique way. Lecture, lecture, notes, 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 test, test, test. As the end of the spring semester arrived, Howard passed another classroom as she heard Marley say something to his friends. Having to learn through the structure of old-school lecture-style teaching, it really made me rethink pursuing science. I remember that assignment Miss Howard made us do once, where we had to answer what science meant to us. I had said science was all about making discoveries. Howard awoke in her own bed, but a voice beckoned her from the next room. Investigating, she found the spirit of teachers present. They visited the current classroom of Howard and watched as she lectured to her class on the levels of classification. "Jacob, wake up this instant! This material will be on the test tomorrow!" Miss Howard exclaimed. At the same moment, Jacob uttered back, "I don't care, Miss Howard. This class is so boring, and I'll never use any of this later on in life." Once again, Howard awoke in her own bed, but as she opened her eyes, the third spirit, the ghost of teacher's future, stood in front of her, flashing before her eyes the future professions of all the students she had ever taught. Not a one of them went on to pursue science as a profession, and that startled her. At that moment, her co-teacher knocked on her classroom door to let her know that the lunch period was almost over, and it seemed as if she had fallen asleep. Howard told her that she felt as light as a feather and as giddy as a first-year teacher all over again. Hearing the bell ring, she ran to the door to greet all of her students with a warm welcome. Seeing one of her students try to run past her, she told him to go and get out the lab coats and goggles, that they were going to think and act like scientists today. Puzzled over what they just heard, the students began to wonder what was about to happen. When the final class bell rang, Howard had all of her students find their seats as she pulled out the Bunsen burner. "Students, today I'm going to tell you how class is going to be run from here on out. Up until this point, you have known Miss Howard to be a lecture-style teacher, cramming your brains with as much knowledge as possible to pass the test. I now realize that this is not what science education is all about. From here on out, I plan to be a science teacher that will incorporate these 10 keystones in my classroom. Number 1, I will not teach to the test, but teach the principles of the curriculum in ways that will inspire you and show you how they relate to your own life. Number 2, I will begin to present material in a way that will allow you to make your own inferences about the world around you. Number 3, I will not simply only lecture when presenting the material, but also provide you with hands-on lab-style learning to inspire you to take the learning process a step further. Number 4, I will do my best to show you the relevance to what it is you are learning, so you can see how it applies or will eventually apply to your life. Number 5, I will provide a classroom environment where you will feel safe to ask questions and discuss possible solutions and conclusions without fear of being judged or ridiculed. Number 6, I will be creative in my approach to the material. Number 7, I will be more observant to see what styles of teaching are most effective for your learning styles. Number 8, I will make sure that you are learning to make your own discoveries about the world around you. Number 9, I will be open to delve deeper into the topics that really excite you. And finally, number 10, I will show you that the realm of science is one that is limitless. There will never be a day where you won't be able to learn something new about the world around you if you simply choose to look. And as she turned on the Bunsen burner, making the flame grow a bright green, Miss Howard asked her students, "Now, class, what does science mean to you?"